Welcome to this video, in which I'm going to present a systematic review on peer assessment, intrapersonal and interpersonal factors. I conducted this study with my colleagues Marian, Javier, and Jose Carlos. Importantly, this review is already published in the journal Assessment and Evaluation in Higher Education, and you can access a preprint version of it on my website if you go to the description of this video, where you will find a link to download. The interest on the effects of interpersonal variables dates back to 2009, when Nanib Panjanib, Min-Sigers, and Hartinema conducted the first review on this topic. Back then, they focused on the interpersonal variables, and they only found a handful of studies to be considered. In 2016, for a handbook edited by Gavin Brown and Louis Harris, I did a new review, adding also the social and human effects on top of the interpersonal aspects. Now, 8 years have gone past, and it was time to do that review again, and this is what I did with the colleagues that I mentioned earlier. In this new review, we wanted to focus on evidence on the relationship between peer assessment and intrapersonal and interpersonal factors. Now, as you can tell, the categories are slightly different from what I used in 2016, where I have human, social, and interpersonal factors. In this new review, we focus on simplifying and integrating all the different subcategories into just intrapersonal and interpersonal factors. Based on this, we explore 4 research questions. First, we obviously have a look and explore the characteristics of the different empirical studies that we included. In the second research question, we focus on something that we consider is very innovative, that is the directional relationship between the different factors and peer assessment. In the third research question, we focus on the effects on intrapersonal and peer assessment, and in the fourth research question, we explore interpersonal and peer assessment. Before we get into the details of our research questions, let me show you how we change the categories. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you have a column that representing the categorization from 2016, and then next to it a column with the current review categorization. As you can see, we fuse 2 subcategories and we split out one of the categories from 2016, plus we added in this new review self-efficacy as a variable to be explored. You can also find on the right-hand side the description for each of these factors that we consider in the current review. Here I am showing the usual figure to show the numbers of included papers. We started with around 500 hits, and we ended up including 69 studies in this review. When it comes to our results in terms of the characteristics of the studies, you can see a summary in this slide. For example, we summarize things like the research design, with most of the study being descriptive or quasi-experimental, or for example, with 41% of the studies using aids such as criteria, prompts, and scales, 27 rubrics, or 70 a combination of them. In our research question number 2, we explore an aspect that we consider crucial and that we had not seen in previous research. Primary research on peer assessment can investigate the effects of interpersonal variables such as motivation on peer assessment. For example, what is the effect of motivation on the length of the feedback given to a peer. But this can also be studied the other way around, via, for example, exploring how and if the length of the feedback received by a peer influence the motivation of the assessee, or so to speak, the person receiving that type of feedback. Obviously, the same is true for interpersonal and peer assessment. Therefore, we are in front of what we are conceptualizing as a bidirectional relationship. Intrapersonal effects can influence peer assessment as much as a peer assessment intervention can influence intrapersonal aspects. And to our knowledge, this is not something that has been identified in previous research. We believe this is key because understanding the directionality of our peer assessment studies will help us interpret what we know in the field. And this is the question. we can answer what is that we are studying more. Are we more interested as a field in the interpersonal factors on peer assessment, such as how friendship affects peer assessment behavior? Or actually we are more interested on how peer assessment affects the social relationship among the assessor and the assessee? So I want you to stop for a second and think, what is your hypothesis? Which one of these directional relationships you think we are going to be finding more research conducted in? And these are the results that we found. The direction most studied by far is how peer assessment affects interpersonal variables such as motivation, self-efficacy, emotion. Interestingly, the other way around, how interpersonal factors influence peer assessment, is the less studied. If we consider interpersonal factor, as you can see, the directionality is more balanced, with 15 studies exploring the effects of interpersonal variables on peer assessment and 18 studies exploring the effects of peer assessment on interpersonal variables. This is indeed a very interesting result, showing that the largest proportion of our understanding on the effects of peer assessment refers to internal aspects of the students. How does peer assessment influence emotion, or the trust in the self as an assessor, or fairness? So this is already a very important conclusion that we can start from this review. And we also hope that this opens some venues for future research being oriented to either one of the directionalities, or at least considering in more clear ways what are the implications of primary research that is coming in the future. Regarding the effects of interpersonal factors and peer assessment, we wanted to mention 5. So the higher the motivation of the students to perform peer assessment, the more engagement and better peer assessment experiences they have. Secondly, peer assessment might improve self-efficacy, but this seems to be modulated by the individual characteristics of the students. Third, the role of emotions in peer assessment has not been systematically studied, and for that reason, we were not able to extract conclusions. Fourth, trust as an assessor is beneficial for learners, but peer assessment can have negative effects also. So we need to do research into how to mitigate these effects. And 5, perceived fairness and comfort are obviously beneficial for peer assessment, but it is unclear which peer assessment design elements enhance these perceptions in the students. So how can we design and implement our peer assessment interventions to increase perceived fairness and comfort? Is a question that still remains. In our research question number 4, we focus on the effects of interpersonal factors and peer assessment. And we want to mainly emphasize 2. Interestingly, while students prefer engaging in peer assessment with peers they know, they actually know that doing so can bring some disadvantages, but they still have this preference. And the second one is that psychological safety, value congruence, and interdependence can enhance the peer assessment experience. But again, we don't know what is the best way yet to do our peer assessment interventions in a way that we enhance these 3 constructs. So while analyzing our results, it was clear to us that we need to improve the quality of the reports on peer assessment studies. We concluded this from our own experience trying to review the papers, that it was sometimes very complex because of the lack of information. But it's also that we need more information, more clear categories to be able to identify what type of educational settings and what features of the intervention on peer assessment influence those variables that I was just mentioning in the research question number 3 and research question number 4. So for this aim, we created this instrument. Our intention is that the instrument that we have created can help report the characteristics of peer assessment designs and interventions for both teachers and researchers. The idea is that, for example, if one researcher has done a peer assessment article, they will fill out this instrument and include it as an appendix. And because The categories we have included are very detailed. Someone, a colleague, for example, reading that paper, will understand more clearly how did the peer assessment intervention look like. And this will be crucial to interpret the results and also to review the upcoming research in the field. So some of the categories that we included in this instrument are, for example, what is the subject domain, the place and time when the peer assessment took place, the setting, the requirement, the alignment, and so forth. The instrument is really easy to fill out. We made it in a way that in a number of categories is basically just ticking on a box. And we believe this is really important to be filled out when we are reporting our peer assessment studies. But also, again, as I was mentioning, as a teacher, we can use the instrument to reflect on whether we have considered all the features that could be relevant when we are trying to implement peer assessment in our classrooms. I will also include a link to this instrument in the description of this video if you are interested. And at the moment, we have this instrument in English and Spanish, and it's, of course, free to download in that link that I just mentioned. So what are the main conclusions that we think you could extract from our review? That would be 4. So the first is that our review contains a new categorization of intrapersonal and interpersonal factors that we believe is comprehensive and also better integrated than previous ones. The second one, and we believe this is key, is this idea of the bidirectional relationship between peer assessment and intrapersonal factors and peer assessment and interpersonal factors. It's crucial that we understand as researchers and teachers what is that we are emphasizing in our interventions, and in that way interpret our results. The third key outcome, of course, is the review of the empirical studies that I just presented. So what are the main results that we have when it comes to intrapersonal and interpersonal factors and peer assessment? And the fourth key outcome, we believe, is this instrument that I just present on how to report and think about the peer assessment characteristics that we want for our studies or to implement in our classroom. For all these 4 combined outcomes, we think the review can influence and help peer assessment scholars, not only in a way to understand what has been done to this day, but also in a way to plan and design the upcoming research in a way that we consider all the limitations, previous limitations, and the knowledge that we have up to date. Obviously, we consider this is a really important field, and we are looking forward to upcoming new research. So that will be all in terms of our review, and we want to thank you for your attention.